this is just a model that we use that it's very helpful for us in looking at what are some of the critical issues in learning. And by the way, as I look at this now and I see the language that I've used on it, I'm reminded that one of the things I wanted to do in the very beginning of this was kind of issue a disclaimer on my language. Yeah, I meant to do that a lot earlier, primarily on account of the fact that myself and this group have really kind of invented our own way to represent and our own lenses to learn through as we proceeded through this. We've not found ourselves obligated to lock on to anybody else's language, and everything to us is a placeholder, meaning that it's not the word, it's what it points to, right? And so we have a series of words which are buttons for us to allow us to travel into lots of different concepts and issues regarding learning that could really throw you off the horse. And so implication is certainly one of those. Anyway, what I'd like to do with this particular chart for a moment is to talk about the learning cycle itself. How is it that somebody's attention remains engaged? How is it that learning's happening not way out here as we might measure it with some kind of a test or some kind of an observation way after the fact, but in terms of the moment-by-moment movements of somebody's attention as they're attending and moving in and out of a learning experience, what are the critical things that are happening there? How is it that these different themes that we've just discussed, such as critical thinking and learning style and multiple frames of intelligence, and so how is it that actually comes into actually happening for the individual learner? And this is a way to help us get at that. I'm going to say that at one level in the attention of somebody who's learning, there's this foreground flow, which I say elemental there, and mean by that here that words, terms, phrases, places, acronyms, particular visual images, particular sound bites, to use the TV term, these are flowing by, so to speak, in somebody's attention while they're in the process of engaging in an experience. That as these are happening, they're pulling up memories. They're causing memories to what is called relevate, to come up into consciousness again. They kind of pull them with them like the wake behind a boat. And that as this is happening, as somebody's learning, there's the primary implication in the learning process is that at some point, the learner is going to be challenged. They're going to experience a point at which everything that they're reading isn't known, everything that you're saying isn't known, everything that they're watching isn't known, that there's this point at which something's new. And when something's new, there isn't a lockstep occurrence between the foreground and the background. There starts to be a separation. So this is the separation that we're talking about here. When we enter some new space, some new learning that occurs, and the separation occurs between this foreground movement and this background movement, and a tension starts to build up. That tension is the challenge. That tension is the point at which that's what is the energy and the excitement that a child or a learner feels when they start to get on something new. And the critical point of this is that everybody's attention span differs, right? And that if the attention span is not sufficient for the stretch of learning to get from where somebody was comfortable through the stretch to something new and then back to the closure, fusion, renewal that somebody can move from again, they drop out. And that's the disengagement trap. So you might say that right here, between where something new really starts to happen and where the renewal starts to occur, which is when all of a sudden what's happening in the foreground and what's happening in the background are, in our language, co-implicate. They implicate one another and fuse back into a kind of renewal which sustains the process going forward again. That until they get to that point, the learner's really vulnerable. They're vulnerable to drop out. That's where challenge and frustration occurs. So right here in this tension gap between starting off in some fresh ground in a learning experience and this process where implication starts to occur, Any incompatibilities with the pace, style, vocabulary level, conceptual density, cognitive style, sensory bias, all the different things that are discussed in terms of learning style, in terms of self-esteem, in terms of cognitive structures, cognitive biases, sensory preferences, all of these issues really bear more than any place else right there. To the extent that right in that point when the learner's moving from something that was comfortable and known into something that's new, which everything that we're doing in education implies that we do that successfully. It's right there when they're in that gap between what was home and what's right now kind of the end of the pier. It's right at that level when every word we use, every term we use, every phrase, every nuance from the teacher, from the textbook, from the whole system, the degree to which that at that level is incompatible with the individual learner's abilities in terms of the vocabulary, conceptual issues, all of these different things, then what we do is create opportunities for disengagement. Disengagement is an artifact of the system. If exactly in that window, if learners were sensitive enough as they entered that critical attention span window in their own learning process to say, no, this doesn't work for me, and change it until it did, right there in that moment, they could learn anything. Anybody could learn anything. And it's because we can't respond to them right there. It's because we have a one-size-fits-all at that level, okay, that we've got this disengagement and we've got this problem between the way that the individual's nervous system wants to learn and the way education wants to relate to it. Because this is what's happening also in learning to walk or learning to see more clearly, to be able to hear sounds, to be able to recognize a language, this ability to differentiate. And it's right here in this window that when you watch a baby learning to walk or a little kid playing a Nintendo game, it's right there in that window that their relationship with what they're doing allows them to act in a way that it doesn't in the educational system. So I'll come back to this from time to time and again, this need for looking at the education process and learning process is ultimately resolving down to how is it that in that critical moment, those critical times in inattention span of somebody who's learning, they're able to act on their own uncertainties, curiosities, again, what we call meaning needs, in such a way as to transform what's in front of them and allow them to reach renewal before their attention drops out.